I told you guys that this was coming. If you're a fan of the Pat McAfee Show, I'm going to go ahead and give you my condolences because the Pat McAfee Show that you have come to know and love, it is over. Now, that's not going to happen today, not going to happen tomorrow. It might take a full year, but you better enjoy the show while you can because eventually the Pat McAfee that you see today, he will no longer exist. Several months ago, when ESPN announced their multi-million-dollar deal with Pat McAfee, I told you guys there was only one way that this could go. The reason Pat McAfee is so popular, the reason that he has been able to build a strong following, Pat McAfee offers something that is very rare, something that we don't often see throughout the mainstream media. Pat McAfee is authentic. He offers authenticity. The show is centered around a group of guys talking about sports, but unlike other shows that we see on ESPN and FS1, which are painfully boring and inauthentic, or what television executives like to call advertiser friendly, unlike shows on ESPN and FS1, the Pat McAfee Show, it features men talking about sports the way men actually talk about sports in real life, the way men talk when the women aren't around, the way men talk when we're drinking beer at happy hour. Now, obviously, this show doesn't fit the criteria at ESPN, the network that claims to be family-friendly while it claims Leah Thomas is the inspirational woman of the year, a network that claims to be family-friendly while it honors Caitlyn Jenner with the Courage Award. Oh, Jen Kate was so courageous, it really took balls to transition from male to female. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. In order to transition from male to female, at some point, you had to have a set of lemons. When this deal with Pat McAfee was announced this spring, some in the media, they thought that this was a sign that ESPN was willing to change directions a little bit, become a bit more edgy. Pat McAfee himself, he took a bite out of this shit sandwich. He claimed that ESPN promised him they would not be changing his show. We want you to be Pat McAfee. We are giving you full creative control. I was perplexed that Pat McAfee actually believed this. Stephen A. Smith is the biggest draw in sports media. Hell, Stephen A. is the only talent in sports media that can move the needle on television. If ESPN is not willing to give Stephen A. full creative control, why would they be willing to give it to Pat McAfee? Stephen A. had to go out and launch a podcast outside of ESPN so he could have full creative control. Now, this is not a knock against Pat McAfee, it's just the truth. But the truth is, Pat McAfee is an unproven commodity on television. It's one thing to consistently draw big numbers on YouTube. It's one thing to draw an audience on TikTok. It is completely different drawing ratings on television. The masturbating bear draws millions of viewers on TikTok. Does that mean the Discovery Channel can hire the bear to spank the wanker and draw millions of viewers on TV? Absolutely not. Now, I'm not saying Pat McAfee doesn't have the ability or the talent to succeed on television. I hope he does. I really do. I wish him all the best. I like Pat McAfee. I'm just saying it's a different medium and it's much more difficult. It is already hard enough to build an audience on TV. And now, Pat McAfee, he's got to deal with the constraints of corporate media. The same constraints ESPN promised he would not have to deal with. The Pat McAfee Show, it premieres at noon today on ESPN Live. Now, by the time you're watching this video, Pat McAfee, he will already be on the air. Well, kind of. The Wall Street Journal announced yesterday afternoon that ESPN is already making changes to the show. The show's still going to be airing live on ESPN as promised, but Pat McAfee, he's not going to be airing live. He's going to be airing on tape delay. Now, the Wall Street Journal, it didn't explain what this meant. This could be your standard 7-second tape delay, or it could mean that ESPN is delaying the show by several minutes. Well, Casey, what's the big deal? Live shows on TV often air on tape delay. Plus, Pat McAfee limited the cursing when he was on radio years ago. He's going to be just fine. First of all, when Pat McAfee was on radio, the show was not nearly as popular. Damn sure wasn't the show that it eventually became. The show didn't become mainstream until the gloves were removed. Now, while all this is true, I'm going to tell you why this is a big deal. Now, sure, this tape delay incident alone, it's minor in the grand scheme of things, but this is a sign of things to come. Both ESPN and Pat McAfee, they are promoting this to the public as a compromise. Pat McAfee told the Wall Street Journal, "Most of us come from blue-collar towns. This is how we speak. I didn't want to lose all our curse words." Again, that is the appeal of the show, the authenticity. ESPN is compromising here by allowing Pat McAfee to continue with the cursing while delaying the show so they can censor the words. No big deal, right? Here's the problem. The Pat McAfee Show, it's going to be airing live on YouTube, real live. ESPN is pretending like this is a win-win. People who don't mind the cursing, they can watch on YouTube, and people with virgin ears, they can watch on ESPN. Basically, ESPN is splitting the audience, for now. Remember the Jerry Springer Show? Back in the 90s, Jerry Springer, #1 show on television. It was very entertaining, but it was incredibly difficult to watch because every few seconds there was a beep. You couldn't understand the dialogue of the show because of the constant censorship. Back then, we just had to deal with it. I mean, we didn't have another option. ESPN, they are giving fans of Pat McAfee an option, the uncensored option on YouTube. The problem is, YouTube is not the reason that ESPN broke the bank to bring in Pat McAfee. They're not paying him $85 million to transfer his YouTube audience from his channel to ESPN's YouTube channel. They are paying him $85 million to draw an audience on TV. Kind of hard to do that when people are watching you on YouTube. Well, Casey, that's not true. ESPN's being paid from advertisers on YouTube just like they are on TV. There is a huge difference in the amount of money advertisers pay on YouTube compared to what they pay on television. If the bulk of Pat McAfee's audience is watching on YouTube, ESPN will lose money on his deal. This show has got to resonate on TV, and it's going to be hard to do that when you're watering down the show already. So what could eventually happen? ESPN could approach Pat McAfee and say, "No more cursing," or at best, limit your cursing, at which point the Pat McAfee Show is no longer the Pat McAfee Show. But it's not just the cursing here that could be censored. What happens if Pat McAfee wants to talk about Leah Thomas? What happens if he wants to discuss the COVID vaccine with Aaron Rodgers? Do you really think ESPN is going to be comfortable with that? Do you really think ESPN will allow that on their airwaves? I think there is already some hesitation amongst the shitfucks at ESPN regarding this deal with Pat McAfee. ESPN Radio is already dying a slow, painful death. They just revamped their entire lineup again. I couldn't even tell you who's on ESPN Radio right now, and we covered the story a few weeks ago here on the channel. I think their morning show features Dick Doofus debating Peaches from Club Shay Shay. Now, for those that don't know, Peaches, most requested dancer at Club Shay. Only dancer they have with hairy peaches and a smooth cucumber. But with ESPN Radio struggling for relevance, why would they not simulcast the Pat McAfee Show? It's too unpredictable. ESPN doesn't want to risk one of those triggering four-letter words being broadcast on FCC airwaves. The government, they can't do anything about it on cable. On public radio, all it takes is one person to complain about the accidental cursing and the FCC will fine the shit out of you. This is what I don't understand here between ESPN and Pat McAfee. You brought this dude in because outside of Stephen A. Smith, you don't have another star at the network. With cable being a subscription service, you're allowed to curse. You're allowed to almost say whatever the hell you want. Remember a few years ago when ESPN aired The Last Dance, the documentary about Michael Jordan? That documentary was filled with cursing. ESPN, they didn't censor any of it. Well, KC, The Last Dance aired in prime time. Pat McAfee's during the middle of the day. And so? Does fuck have a different impact at noon than it does at 9 o'clock at night? ESPN is censoring Pat McAfee because they are trying to continue to promote the network as a family-friendly network. Hell, Disney is still trying to promote the company as a family-friendly brand. But there ain't nothing family-friendly about Disney or ESPN. I would rather my kid hear 1,000 fucks before they saw ESPN promoting someone like Leah Thomas as the inspirational woman of the year. This is the beginning of the end for Pat McAfee. And to his credit, I don't think he will go down quietly. I don't know him personally, but Pat McAfee seems to be a fighter. He seems to be a normal person, which is why he is so relatable. But ESPN has all the leverage here. The non-binary mouse is signing the front of the check. Pat McAfee signing the back of the check. Over the past couple of years, how many times have we seen people leave ESPN and come out publicly and admit that they were being silenced by the network? Sage Steele, Charlie Arnold, hell, even altar boys at Woke United Methodist like Jay Williams, even he admits that he was being silenced at ESPN. He claimed that he couldn't be his true self because of the restrictions. What makes Pat McAfee think that he is going to be any different? I'm going to change ESPN from the inside. Yeah, sure. It's like the woman who marries the alcoholic. She goes into the marriage thinking that all he needs is the support of a strong woman. She goes into the marriage thinking that she can change him. 5 years later, he's drinking double the amount he was drinking when they were dating, and she's contacting the lawyer for a divorce. I think the same thing is going to happen between ESPN and Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee is not going to be changing ESPN. ESPN will be changing Pat McAfee, or at least they're going to try. If he doesn't change, there's only one way for this relationship to end: divorce. I wish Pat McAfee the best. I really do. I like the dude. I've got a lot of respect for him, but this marriage between him and ESPN, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem like a good fit. It feels like the money blinded Pat McAfee to the potential consequences. But hey, I could be wrong here. Maybe ESPN will keep their promise and give Pat McAfee full creative control. What do you think? Can the Pat McAfee Show really be the authentic version on ESPN? The censored cursing, the tape delays, is that a sign of things to come? Or do you think that this was actually a good compromise? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.